dads get custody when they ask for it. They simply just get it if they simply ask. I'm sure you've all heard this popularized myth by now. It sure is interesting how one small group of people can take one small survey done in one small county, manipulate the ever-living shit out of those numbers, and then propagate one of the biggest lies about fathers in family court I have ever heard. People who honestly believe that fathers can simply walk into the courtroom and just get custody when they ask usually are citing the exact same singular study done, and the arguments usually sound a little bit like this.
Pearl is right, dude. She has facts to prove it. I mean, sure, that could be one explanation. I mean, it's not like you would comment on a video where I call somebody out for using false made-up statistics by using false made-up statistics, right? that would be embarrassing. That would be really, really embarrassing. You should be embarrassed. It comes from the 1986 gender bias study of the court system in Massachusetts.
It's the only one there ever was.
They wanted to look at how often fathers sought custody. What they found, as the section heading says, is that men won custody over 70% of the time. So all comments like this actually prove is that you don't do any research of your own. You don't care whether what the things you say are true, and that you get upset when you encounter people who are not as gullible as you.
Oh, ex-patriarch, you're not claiming dads simply get custody when they ask for it again, are you? I mean, you wouldn't take one singular study that was based only on temporary custody orders in a minority state where joint custody is the standard temporary order, where the study still definitively concludes that mothers get sole physical custody 65% more often than dads, only to cherry pick the facts so that only your narrative is supported, then push this as some irrefutable nationwide fact, would you? Because that would be really embarrassing. You should be embarrassed. See, that same Massachusetts study that you're trying to quote, you left a lot of stuff out. It's just convenient that when trying to demonstrate how easily fathers get custody, you happen to leave out the part of this study that found that mothers are awarded sole custody at 65% the rate that fathers are asking the exact same thing. I have no idea how ex-patriarch has ended up on the ethers of trying to impress momtok, but either way, he's decided he's going to pander to these bitter women by ham-fisting delicious misinformation down their bitter man-hating gullets. And me, I'm just here to debunk these garbage claims. Let's take a look at this study where we found that men get custody when they simply ask. Now, this study was performed out of Massachusetts, one of only 11 states that offers joint temporary legal custody between parents. So for this state, the law is that men do get custody when they ask for it temporarily, which is untrue for all 39 other states. Every single other state in this country is a sole custody state, meaning you would never be able to replicate these results in any of those other states. Of course, more men are getting custody in Massachusetts because it's actually the law there. So if you like those results, guess what? You're on our side. You're on the side of equal shared parenting because we're the ones pushing for equal shared parenting in all 50 states so that fathers can get the custody they deserve. The only way to get the results that you like bragging about is through equal shared parenting. Next, to understand how these numbers even got so warped this way, we have to understand who conducted this study and why. You also have to ask who funded it. So interestingly enough, the woman who was assigned to collect this data for this study was never told that it was going to be used for a gender bias study. In fact, she was very surprised to learn that it was. She was only told to collect information on temporary court order decisions. With lawyers and judges having a lot to gain from removing the skepticism of gender bias from the courtrooms, as well as convincing men, traditionally the higher earners, that they actually have a shot in court, it sounds like they kind of already decided the results of this survey before it was even conducted. First, let's examine the fact that this survey only covers fathers who get legal custody, leaving out completely the fathers who are denied physical custody. Why is that important? Because there's a huge difference between legal custody and physical custody. Legal custody simply means you have to pay child support. Physical custody means you actually get to see your child. So this study basically demonstrates, sure, there's a lot of fathers entering the system. That doesn't mean that anyone's letting these fathers around their kids. Finally, this study only looks at temporary orders granted at the initial divorce filing. This isn't terribly useful considering most custody agreements get modified later on. An author named Mark Rosenthal actually published an entire paper debunking these numbers. Rosenthal demonstrates every way in which the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court warped the numbers marvelously and found that when you actually look at the full findings, the reality is that when mothers seek sole custody, they get primary physical custody between 73.8% and 95% of the time. So, in conclusion, the study that conclusively finds that men are definitely awarded custody 70% of the time was A, only based off of temporary orders, B, in a state where temporary orders are the standard at the divorce filing, and C, still ultimately demonstrates that moms are still getting the majority of the custody that they ask for, unlike fathers. But men like ex-patriarch still want to argue there's no bias against fathers. Right. In fact, let's take some more personal anecdotes outside of Massachusetts, starting with my own. My husband found out he was going to become a dad in his early 20s with a girl he wasn't even seriously dating at the time, and he gave up his job, left his friends, family, everything he knew to move 250 miles to be as close to his son as he could. He was as available as possible, had no issues providing, no substance abuse issues, no mistreatment of the mother. He filed for custody and was denied. Why? Because Michigan, like most states, unlike Massachusetts, is a sole custody state. In these states, when an unmarried mother has a child, she has what's called natural guardianship, meaning she is awarded sole physical and legal custody straight out of birth. And if my husband wants to get any custody, he's going to have to prove that she's unfit. Well, both parents are fit. Apparently, the state of Michigan doesn't think that a child can have two fit parents, and if so, that they only need one of them. In cases where guardian ad litems are involved, a position that is very rarely filled by anyone with an actual background in law, psychology, or social work, reasons for denying custody have been as simple as because the child is young and belongs with their mom. Or what about this one? Dad actually does get custody, but mom convinces a judge that she can't find work here, so she needs to move to Canada. She's a graphic designer, by the way. Funny how the judge wasn't really listening to her argument until Dad ran out of money and had to start representing himself. Suddenly, it made a ton of sense. Or what about the dad who agreed that he would watch the child during the day while mom took over at nights because of their work schedules, only for her to document this for an entire year, bring it to the courts, then get full custody because overnights is all it's based off of? What's so annoying is that these white knight men like ex-patriarch are the first ones to point out, rightfully, that laws against women working or having credit cards have held us back societally for so long, yet refuse to acknowledge that men are still fighting an uphill battle against generations of the tender years doctrine, which assumed that mothers are more fit for custody. Like, show some intellectual consistency. Guys like ex-patriarch use women as a sword and a shield for their own ego. You have zero stake in this game as a 40-year-old childless man, and yet here you are trying to be the hero of it by spreading lies about other men. If you really want to help women, stay out of our way so we can get fathers back into the home.